We are probably the only thing standing between you and happy hour, so we'll promise to make it interesting and fast. But before we kind of get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation, I did want to do a quick introduction of who we actually are. And so like Devanshu said, my name is Jeffrey Lin. I run our solution engineering function here for Acquia based out of Singapore. I'm originally from San Francisco, but have been making my way around Asia and learning a lot of great businesses, dealing business in India and so on and so forth. So really looking forward to sharing with you a lot of, I guess, war stories, if you will, right? In terms of looking at the ways of leveraging Open DXPs for enterprises, as well as looking at, say, how to stay competitive in this really new world of work, I call it. But really, that's just me. I do want to turn into Piyush over to him before we start getting to the heart of all this.
Sure, Jeff. Thanks for a quick introduction. Hi, guys. This is Piyush. I work as a director of technology with QED42. As a part of my day-to-day job, I primarily interact with the customers, like in a very consultative mode, hearing what kind of problems they're facing, how they want to grow their business, and supporting them with design and technology, which is what primarily QED42 provides as a service to solve those problems. Over here, me and Jeff, we're going to talk about our experiences together, wherein we have helped customers solve these kind of problems in the past. How we have helped our customers achieve digital transformation and achieve their business goals, KPIs, meet the KPIs, etc. Right. So I'm going to keep it brief and short and focus more on the meaty piece of this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I think like when we think about DXP in this world, Piyush, right? I mean, you have the Gartners and the Forrester world, all these analysts, right, who are coming up with these terminology. It feels like every 6 months or so, we have new buzzwords, right? But truth be told, DXP itself is an evolution of things that many of our listeners and many of our viewers are probably already familiar with. I mean, maybe we can start doing this, right? Let's start off by defining what is actually DXP. I mean, what would you call it actually? Maybe you can help us understand that.
Yep, sure. I think even to define like a core definition for DXP may be something else, but I would like to go back a little bit and see how the web world was. Like, for example, CMS web experience management platforms were pretty popular back in early 2010s, I would say, right? Wherein the focus was primarily on being able to generate content from a single system and be able to present it to end users on a web interface, right? Yep. Focus I see has changed wherein now the customers are not deciding where a consumer should consume content, but rather consumers are in the driving seat and they are deciding how they should consume content, right? I'm talking more from a perspective of content being at the center and then being consumed by different channels, right? Yep. This has the shift has primarily been because the way a customer consumes content has changed over past couple of years, and this has led to the invention or discovery of DXP. I would not say invention; I would say rather discovery of DXP, because DXP is nothing but it's an integrated platform. You can think of DXP as an integrated platform wherein different disjoint systems of your business can communicate with each other, give you a very insightful information, and based on that information, you can take core business decisions to meet your KPIs, goals, and basically devise your entire business strategy based on it. Mm-hmm. That's what I would call a DXP as, right? In terms of I would also like to touch base a little bit on open composable DXP, which is another sub buzzword in DXP space, and a closed DXP, right? So let's assume that there's an enterprise which is already functional. The business is running in some way or the other, right? It's not meeting its KPIs yet, but they're still able to be functional, right? So which means that they have certain ways or certain systems, certain CRM, certain marketing tools in the system, but they're not probably talking to each other today. You have a lot of data in there, but this data is not meaningful yet, right? And this is where I believe an Open DXP comes in, wherein it has its own set of marketing tools, its own set of CDP platforms, and so on. But it also allows you to integrate your existing tools, set of data together, and give you insightful reports. So this way, you don't lose out on the data that you already have on your existing platforms, right? On the contrary, a closed DXP can be thought of more of a proprietary software or a proprietary platform, wherein there are a set of standardized or standard tools which have been integrated together, and they talk to each other in a very generic way, right? To our consumers or to our listeners on this call, I would like to also mention, from our experience in the past, we have not seen that this is one solution which would fit in for all kind of business scenarios. For example, let's take Salesforce as a marketing cloud, right? It may be suitable for X customer, but might not suit customer Y, is what we have seen. So the flexibility of being able to mix and match different platforms and integrate them together is what an open DXP brings in. While with a closed DXP, you don't get that flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Right.
And what's interesting in this world is that, I look back at kind of the history of Acquia. Right? I mean, as many, actually, maybe not everyone knows this, right? But if you look back at the history of Acquia, right, we're founded by essentially the founder of Drupal, which was one of the first and open source CMS out there in the marketplace, right? But in my experience, I found that when I always talk about content, and when we talk about how fast we have to iterate with content, it always leads to the next evolution, that conversation, which is that when we talk to, at the heart of it, the KPIs that you're talking about is to help businesses do what, right? Elevate content to help them drive business goals like making more revenue, driving more profit, right? Create more engaging content to get to those KPI goals that I think every one of us is looking for. And I think that really formulates kind of the evolution from traditionally a CMS conversation into now what we know as kind of a modern DXP, right? And that could envelop not just the content piece that we always think about generically, but also the marketing side of things. How do you create better nurturing campaigns? How do you elevate your segmentation capabilities, right? To make sure that you are targeting more loyal customers. I think these are all facets of it that traditionally, 15, 20 years ago, no one thought that far. But, like you said right now, the enterprise has changed so much. Consumers are driving behavior, driving businesses. So realistically, the DXP is where we should all be sitting, right? To ensure that we're staying in the forefront of all customer needs. Sorry, just totally hijacked your conversation piece there, but I want to see, is that kind of what you're thinking about too?
Yeah.
That makes sense, but I know that's aligning.
Yes, Jeff. Yeah. So I think it's an open conversation. So we both can pitch in where we need to fill in.
Yeah. Well, I guess here's a question for you: is what do you see in terms of timeline? Right? If you can paint me a picture? Let's say what organization should be looking to adopt either a closed DXP or open DXP for that matter, right? Maybe if we bring it down a bit more, what is the right time frame? What should they be looking for before they make a step into adopting a DXP in the organization?
The answer to that is a little tricky, Jeff. So I'll again go back and say that every organization will need to take a step back first of all, and maybe do a discovery, including their CXOs, right from the CXOs to the actual implementers in the team. Sit together and see what their needs are today. Right. Always take a phased approach rather than taking a direct jump and seeing that. So let's say something new has come out in the market. It's always a tendency for folks to adopt it and say that this will solve all of my problems, right? Rather than doing that, take a phased approach, take a step back, do a discovery of your own, that what your needs are today, who your customers are, try to understand their requirements. Where are these customers? Are these customers using cell phones, or are these customers consuming your data via AR, VR, IoT? How and where these customers are, try to understand that, and try to also look at your current investments into IT, what you have already invested into, right? And put certain targets, right? Basically try to create KPIs, map them to your goals, map them to what your customer needs are, and then map it with your current skill set and processes that you have. then take a decision that this is what my short-term goal should be. This is what my long-term goal should be. Always be futuristic while you're planning your digital strategy, because if you think of a very short-term vision, you might be able to achieve it, and then tomorrow you would be like,
Oh shoot.
this the tech stack that I have adopted no longer fulfills my needs. I'll need to redo things and adopt it again. So adopt another technology. So be phase wise is what I would say, and do a discovery oriented approach.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell you what, let's revisit that, because that is I think that's very interesting when we talk about phased approaches, right? Because in itself, right, DXP is a pretty big topic, right? But
yep.
I think for the benefit of everyone here, given that, I'm guessing most of us are probably here from India, right? As with kind of the purpose of this webinar today, right? I kind of want to level set with you a bit more, which is understanding just what is happening within India, right? Because you did mention this before, where, well, you have a couple of big life events, right, in the last 2 years. Obviously, the pandemic hit, right? And even now, where a lot of consumable content is driven by more of the end user versus being driven by the enterprises, right? So I'll give you an example. In the past, brands have always led with kind of this customer journeys, right? They talked about digital transformations, right? Taking the traditional brick and mortar experience, right, to online. And now we're finding a lot of these companies are also now taking that same experience and learnings online and applying back into brick and mortars. So now you have this kind of like feedback mechanism that go back and forth all the time. But I think the net of all this is that the underlying pinning aspect is the data piece. And I think it's fair to say that right now that customers are really in a driver's seat. So I guess in this case, my question is, given all these various factors, I mean, what does this mean for businesses who are trying to not only keep up, but perhaps even think about future-proofing themselves with their investments?
Right. So, Jeff, as you rightly mentioned, pandemic, for example, has changed the way businesses operate. Consumers consume content. Right. For example, everyone was locked into their houses, and they by no means people could go out, try shirts or try clothes at a store and then purchase it. Right. This has changed considerably during the pandemic phase, especially in India, I would say. And what we have seen is startups are taking a great lead at this, wherein they're able to very quickly innovate, very quickly adopt to the customer needs. For example, we were working with a small startup, and we were able to build them a online portal really quick during the pandemic phase. Also, give them sort of a virtual experience wherein a user could go and take a look at a wardrobe, try it on, how things would look like for them. So you see the way a consumer was consuming content pre-pandemic changed during pandemic and post-pandemic, right? Wherein you can't go to a store, but you would want a similar experience at least in a digital way, right? So the way consumer used to consume content has changed, and similarly, businesses need to adapt to it. Startups are adopting to it pretty fast. With DXP, again, an integral part of DXP, I would say, or an integral feature of DXP, or center core of DXP will always be content, right? Which is something a CMS provides you with, right? And making this content editable or modifiable by marketing managers without any web development is one of the important aspects of it, which is what we enabled our customers to do, right? Enterprises, on the other hand, we have seen have been pretty slow at adopting this, and I would say my recommendation here should be enterprises should become more agile and try to adopt and pace up with how the consumer needs are changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think of one experience, right? Because we're talking about, it's all about learnings, right? And the pandemic really changed how we behave in a way, because in the digital space, we can personalize pretty much end to end, right? Every single experience that a consumer has. But in the offline space, maybe not so much, right? But I do remember, there was one interesting experience I had back not too long ago. I'll share with you here, right? Which was that I went into a brick and mortar, like a big sports retailer. I think we all know the name, but I won't say who they actually are. And as I walked around, right, I get a notification on my phone, right? Hey, Jeff, right? I knew you were a loyalty member 12345, right? Because you're here at our physical store, I want to give you 10% off. What do you think I did? I mean, I clicked in, right, for that content piece, right, for that discount code. And what's really interesting was that not only did I take a look at that discount code and actively look for ways to spend my money, but I was also reading kind of the articles where, I love, football, right? Reading more about, oh, hey, by the way, we sponsor Manchester United, all this other stuff, right? But that level of engagement, right, really is what we should all be striving for, right? I mean, not just in the digital space, but also in offline space. I think one very key here is you think about how the sports retailer got to that endpoint about having that right experience. It's the fact that they're able to iterate really fast and figure out what works and what doesn't work, right? And I think that's what DXPs really offer from a technology standpoint is that I have an idea, I have a concept, I need to figure out if this is going to work or not, right?
Yep.
If it doesn't work, I'm going to move on. The less time I waste on terrible ideas that don't work, the more money I save and the less effort I need to put forth. I think that's where, to your point, I think a lot of startups, right, have this kind of mentality of iterating really, really quickly, really, really fast.
Yeah.
Right? Not for the failure.
Yep. I mean, this also brings me back to one of the other experiences that we have had recently, and I mean, the outcomes were measurable in this case. So I would like to bring that up.
Yep.
We're working with a I would say another startup wherein these guys were responsible for allowing users to get their digital devices repaired online.
Ooh.
Right, wherein you could fill in a form and then repairman gets assigned to you, and then the entire journey goes offline. Right, this is how they used to operate, and they used to see a lot of bounce rate on their site. Like a lot of customers came in on the form page, lead form page. They started filling in, and then they didn't hit the submit button. Right, we implemented a very small solution for them, wherein we brought in a chatbot. So as soon as a user fills in his name, let's say I filled my name Piyush, I entered my email address piyush@q42.com, put in my phone number. Right then, the chat box pops up and greets me like, "Hi Piyush, how are you doing today? And what is the service that you're looking forward for?" Right. So you see, the data that I feed it in the form is already available to this chat bot, which are two different services entirely.
Yep.
But brought together on this platform, and this provides an integrated experience for a customer. Not only a user is able to go through a decision tree kind of questionnaire via chatbot, but also towards the end, the chatbot has an opportunity to do a cross sell. Like, for example, you might be interested in getting an extended warranty for your screen repair, right? And even if I say no, this data is getting recorded in a CRM or a journey mapping tool in the backend, right? And based on this data, my personalization engine, which is an AI powered personalization engine, can pick up this data and show me a hero banner the next time I log into the site. Are you interested? Showing that purchase an extended warranty service, which means that as a customer, if I'm logging in, I would have more confidence that these guys are taking in my data, but they're also utilizing this data in a very in a way which would save my time browsing through their website, right? And what we have seen is a growth in 60%. So the bounce rate reduced by 60%. The sales or the lead form submissions went up by 70% on the site. I mean, it was overall a great success for the customer. They loved the experience.
Oh, I'm sure anything over like 60% is going to be a winner in my
opinion. Yeah, right? So. And on top of that, you could see all of this on a single dashboard. Like, this is what your lead submission frequency percentages. This is how much of it which got converted. These are how many cases wherein you need where your personalization engine has picked it up and generated a lead score. This is where it has updated the lead score, and now the user, if he logs in back to the site, would see a generic banner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think you said one really important point that kind of caught my attention, which is that we talked about data, right? The fact that the chatbot helps you generate a custom experience, right? That ultimately entice the user to provide their data for the cross-selling, upselling component. And I think a lot of times in my conversations with a lot of enterprises and startups alone, right? Everyone wants to get to that data layer piece, right? Like, oh, hey, I want to get as much data as possible. But I think the biggest thing is that people forget for someone to give you their data willingly, you have to give them a reason too. And that goes back to my point of that if you don't know what experience is going to help you get that user to give you the data, then you've never stepped out the door. You never even got the first step here, right? So to me, it's like, well, if you want to future proof and start thinking about allowing yourselves to be forthcoming, right? Then data should be an important part of that conversation. But that's just my thought, right? I want to hear from you, basically. Like, I mean, when you think about
Absolutely,
future
Jeff.
proofing, right? Businesses, what do you got? What do you think we should
This is, I mean, that's 100% important for a customer to feel valued, that their data is being utilized correctly. Because today's customer, they know that the uh, the the web applications are tracking more of their data. Like since digital transformation happened, I mean, every customer knows that their data is being tracked somewhere or the other. What
Mhm.
puts them off is if this data is not is still waste, is still not leading to saving time by showing by show by showing them what they need to see, what they intend to see actually, right? And one of the other difficult parts in this equation comes in when you have omni-channel, when you have
Oh,
multiple channels, right? For example, you have data consumers from Facebook, you have data consumers on a web app, you have data consumers via chatbot, and whatnot, right? Over there, I mean, if you have multiple channels, it becomes more difficult to do a manual task of being able to like show the right personalized data to an end user. And this is where I believe a DXP comes in, wherein like introducing a artificial intelligence predictive analysis model through which it can generate scores for different channels and show the right personalized information to an end user automatically. One of the other aspects that I would like to touch base on, Jeff, is since enterprises and startups are storing this data, are capturing this data from our customers, one of the most essential parts, or most essential parts of this equation becomes like keeping this data very secure,
Yep.
right? Because if I mean, it doesn't lead to just a revenue loss by you getting fined for certain compliances that you don't follow, but also it leads. I mean, the bigger impact is customers' confidence getting lost in you, right? And this is where I would say digital experience platforms come into picture, wherein they provide you with a platform level compliance and privacy policies, right? For example, GDPR compliance, HIPAA compliance for your pharma industry. These are pretty, I would say, mandate requirements which folks need to follow. Otherwise, you're dealing with very sensitive data, which should not get into the wrong hands at all, right? And I would just like to add, DXPs provide you with platform level compliance, which means that if you are on the platform, all of your web properties that you're developing on the platform are compliant uh, with those guidelines.
Yeah. It's just one less thing to worry about. And I always find this conversation around consent and data rights really interesting because, at the heart of it, here's how I think about it. And tell me if it's controversial to you, right? Which is that
Mm-hmm.
as much as we want to say, hey, we want to respect and protect all the data that customer has, right? At the end of the day, as businesses, right, we still want to collect their data so that we can
Yeah.
do other things with it, right? Because ultimately our lifeline is very dependent on
Mm-hmm.
enticing the users to give us data, right? So there's this kind of, in a way, almost a conflict of interest, right? We have to ensure that we have all the platform, the whole data collection privacy policies in place, ensure governance, control, security, right? On the other end, want to collect as much data as possible, right? So I come back to the point of that to help bridge that. It really comes down to what ideas are you providing for users to allow them to give you data. I'll give you a great example once, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of cars dealerships, right? Let's say manufacturers like the Toyotas, Hondas in the world, right? How they measure actual conversions on their site is actually if someone actually submits their phone number, their email, and comes in for a test drive. Now, this is actually true in the EU, right, or across Japan, also in the United States and other countries. But for that user to give you that kind of first party rights data, right, of phone number, email, they have to have something in return, right? So here's what's really cool about car manufacturers is that many of them will actually allow you to go on there and customize your car. Right? I mean, how many times have we gone and said, I'm going to pick a red color car, right? With 18-inch wheels, right? With like leather trim seats. Whether I can afford it or not, that's a whole different equation, right? But nonetheless, right, that experience of going through and clicking and adding these things makes you feel like you're shopping, right?
Yep.
Now, of course, yeah, I would love to submit my data because you've gotten me to that point, and I'm going to give you permission to then find me again. But what's actually really cool is by me submitting that data, right, it now allows these companies, these car manufacturers, to then personalize the further experience with me, not just on the website. What usually happens is now that car I just configured, right? Next time I see an ad on Facebook, the next time I see an ad on Google, next time I see an ad on my favorite website, what do you think is going to be there? That same car in red, the same trim that I customized in that ad saying, hey, Mr. Lin, you should come in for a test drive, right? And if I click in on it, what should be the first thing I see on the website? That same car I just configured, right? So this goes back to your whole point of omni-channel, right? You're enticing a user to give you their data so that you can then personalize experience for them. But we can't forget the fact that we have to ensure we are compliant with all of the first-party data privacy laws. And I think that's a big thing that you're saying here is that with DXPs, right? The true definition of DXP is that they do this for you automatically to take that heavy load off of your hands, right?
Yep. And a business owner can just sit and relax, like nothing is gonna go wrong, and I can focus on my business goals, my business strategies. I don't really need to care about it.
It's true, and
the platform is going to take care of it.
Agree. And even on the security side, right? The IT folks, right? I mean, like, it's just one less thing to worry about. And I've seen a lot of success stories as a result of this. So, yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, here, let's go back to this, right? Here's something I think about because we've talked about a lot of great ideas, right? And I think, honestly speaking, right, this is a lot, right? And if we think of what we talked about, which is the complete omni-channel customer experience, data collection, right, as the holy grail of what all organizations strive to get to, how do we help them get there? I guess what would be the short-term considerations, right? If we think about this from really a phased approach, in your experience, what would be your recommendation in working with so many different Indian customers?
Right. I think it's as I mentioned, Jeff, earlier, like it should be a phased approach, right? And to core of a DXP comes data, because if you don't have data, there's nothing to customize or measure or personalize, right? So implementing a CMS should be at the heart of it, right? Wherein a content manager is able to go ahead and create unique digital experiences on their own, right? There's no dependency on a dev team. You're able to quickly roll out new marketing campaign pages, run those campaigns on your website really quickly. So that should be the very first step, wherein you're able to collect data, create data, and create these experiences for end users on one platform at least, right? That is what my first step would be, right? Secondly, I think I would also talk a little bit about governance, compliance, and security, because although it used to be an afterthought earlier, like something that's going to slow down evolution and those kind of thoughts, but with digital transformation like gaining pace like this, it has become it has to be a forethought thing. Ensure that the platform that you're choosing has baked in for these compliances and is secure, right? Focus on that part of it. Now, since you have data collected with you, this is the time to measure, right? And also be able to see what your users are doing on your website, right? So first phase is basically be able to create data. Phase 2 is where you start collecting user behaviors, planning, basically not even planning. So phase 2 is more about analytics, wherein you are analyzing what your users are doing on your website, what sections your users are browsing more, right? And phase 3 is utilizing this data to give them personalized experiences, which increases the engagement for your customers with your brand. So I would take a phased approach like this in a 3-step way, Jeff, and tie in with your budgets with these phases, because of course it's going to be very difficult to justify to your management, like, this is the cost that's going to take us to for the digital transformation journey, right? Yeah. But rather, it's much easier to say that with this cost, I'll be able to achieve this, and be able to fuel my next phase, right? Fuel my phase, and output from my phase 2 will fuel my phase 3, right? So that's the kind of approach I would recommend for CXOs to take up.
That's a fair point. And I think you touched on a very important topic there, right? Because I know we have one chat here, which is about how do you justify this to management, which, let's be honest, right? Most people at that level are thinking about either cost savings, right? And how does it compare to, say, revenue generated, right? And I mean, those are questions I come up against all the time, right? And I think about, if we think about digital experiences in a website in general as a profit center versus a revenue cost center, it really changes the conversation, right? Because we can actually quantify from a good website that maybe you've had experience working on, right? How much of your business revenue has been generated as a result of having a good website versus having no website, right? So these are facets that we can talk about. And we haven't even touched upon, say, cost savings, right? In terms of development time, in terms of like speed.
Absolutely.
Right. Yep. Right. And this is one example. I think back to, here's something that's interesting is that, coming from the United States, right? As you may know, right? We are a huge consumer-based economy, right? I mean, you can name the holidays in the world, Black Fridays and whatnot, right? I think India, very similar, right? Where you have great behemoth like Amazon, Flipkart, right? Really dominating some of the markets out there. And to me, I think the holy grail of a lot of, say, smaller companies, right, is to get to that kind of efficiency where you're driving a lot of revenue, right, and automating as much as that possible. And I think of the term design systems that to mind, right, because of these efficiencies. And this is something we talked about, but I would love for you to kind of share your thoughts about kind of what you think about when it comes to design systems.
Yeah, so I think I would like to take a use case here, like a very important use case wherein there are enterprises which have presence, or their brands, I would rather call them as brands, which have presence in different geographical regions. Right. For example, you take Nestle. Nestle has presence in almost 120 different geographical regions, right? And each geographical region is managing has different set of content, of course, and different set of needs. Each side being controlled by different marketing managers, because they want to launch marketing campaigns based on the seasons that they have, which may differ from another country, right? So, but all of them want a consistent brand experience, right? Nestle as a brand should have a single brand design language, which all of these 120 different web properties should speak about, right? This is where a design system comes in and helps a brand achieve that kind of consistency, right? With a design system, what you get is a set of visual components which you can use to build new unique digital experiences. This is also a segment wherein low code site builders come in, right? Wherein you can build a new unique digital experience even without the need for a developer to come in and code it in for you, right? So complete flexibility in the hands of complete power in the hands of marketing managers to be able to build these experiences, be able to track how these campaigns are performing as well.
And I think that goes on to kind of the next step, which is like success metrics.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, how do you measure this? How do you measure money well spent?
So yeah, I think I would like to tie it in with a couple of things, like how much your revenue went up, how much you reduced in terms of your operational costs, because a DXP is going to allow you to like help you reduce manual work which you have been doing so far, right? And at the same time, basically how your user engagement has increased on the site, right? And how many and that translates back into how many visitors on your site have been converted into consumers, right? These are the 4 different metrics which I would primarily focus it on. But yeah, it again depends on what the business needs are. It depends on the business type you are in. For example, a manufacturing might have different set of metrics,
Mhm.
different set of detail metrics, and e-commerce website might have a different set of success metrics for them. But yeah, I think right from the day one, wherein you start planning your digital strategy, say that these are my KPIs, which ties back to these goals, right? And those KPIs to goals mapping should act as your success metrics for a DXP. DXP would provide you a tool to measure it for sure. It will give you a dashboard. It will give you a very nice looking dashboard, but you need to align it with how you have strategized your business to grow in, right?
Mm. Mhm.
That's what I would say. We also have Jaya on the call, who is a digital strategist at Ashoka. I would like to bring in Jaya to the panel and let her talk about her experience. Give me
Yeah.
1 second.
I'm looking forward to this. And nothing really beats like a real life example, right? And so
Yep. Yeah.
someone who's been in the trenches, have gone through kind of the wars and battles of all of this, right? I mean, we all have something to gain and learn from, unfortunately, right? Mistakes I may have taken, right? As well as successes. And so,
Yep.
Jaya, we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to offer here.
Hey, Jaya.
Hi. Hi,
Hey.
Jeff. Lovely meeting you, and big hi again, Piyush.
Hey.
I am the digital strategist at Ashoka, which is a worldwide NGO. We started off in DC, but we now have a presence in over 90 countries. We have physical offices in over 30 countries where there are content editors adding stuff to our Drupal websites, right? So, which is a lot of people, a lot of culturally different people for whom the website has to cater to. And I think the way the website has grown in Ashoka is very interesting. Like when Piyush was explaining how these days consumers define how content should be presented rather than we at Ashoka saying this is what people need to see about Ashoka. We no longer have that luxury, so we moved from a translatable website into a fully localizable website, which meant that even though we had content in Spanish, the same Spanish was not relevant to Argentina or Venezuela as it was for Spain. So we started having Argentinian Spanish versions, Venezuelan Spanish versions, right? Which made a lot more sense. Even in English, like the English that somebody wanted to read in India was very different from what the US wanted to actually market, because the fellowship in Europe, in the US is so different from here in India. So when we move from our just translatable version to a localizable version, that's when we realize the absolute power of a digital experience platform, right? And like both of you already mentioned, compliance plays such a huge role when you start collecting information from people. And GDPR compliance, especially given our very, very strong presence in Europe, we had to get really smart about it. And we didn't have much time to do it also. But the huge advantage that we faced was that once we understood this, and once we had our DXP completely compliant, we were able to use this as a stick to let our folks know across our organization that you are no longer safe with your off-platform web properties. Move into our environment, you're safe, your data is safe, and it's compliant and maintained by the ITI team. Whereas previously we had no control. Like folks found it very simple to somebody sitting in Germany would just spin up a German website, right? And we wouldn't even know. But because of the kind of control that we now had over compliance, we were able to use that both as a carrot and as a stick to get in a lot of our team members to come into our platform. And the other very, very critical aspect that I wanted to talk was mentioning how Jeff was mentioning about the evolution of content and the evolution of marketing influences that decide how our DXP should be. Really makes a huge difference, right? And the fact that we have to remain awake and remain aware is so important, because we are now moving from this localizable content that I was just talking about, which we thought was, totally path breaking, that somebody in Argentina is immediately able to read what is relevant to them, to now realizing that somebody in Argentina may also be interested in what is happening in India, for instance, because pandemic has forced everybody to sit at home. So you are no longer only looking for events which you can physically attend, but you're also interested in events that are relevant to you, but happening in different parts of the country, the world. So we are now starting to work on transforming our experience into something where the consumer decides what they want to view. Instead of telling them, okay, you are in Argentina, so you are interested in Argentinian news, we are telling them you are in Argentina, but let us know where you are interested, where do you want to go, what do you want to see. So that is the next step that we are foreseeing at Ashoka on how we can transform our existing platform. I can keep talking, but I will quickly.
Well, I will make a comment, Jaya. Hopefully, tell me if I'm misrepresenting it. If I am, I apologize. But what's interesting, based on what you just told me, was that everything you talked about was actually a business outcome, right? And what's interesting to that is that when we think about technology, right, I think it's fair to say technology is an enabler, right? It enables everything that you talked about, whether you're targeting people in Argentina and India and whatnot, right? It's something you put in the background and let it work for you, so that you can focus on more pressing matters, which in this case, right, is personalizing those experiences for all the individuals that you guys have such a big impact on. And I think that's key for everyone here to think about, is that technology shouldn't be the end all be all. It's the fact that it enables you to get to your business goals, right? So that you could do the creative stuff that elevates not just your careers, right, but also your organization's competencies. So that's something I want to call out, because I appreciate stories like that, right, rather than the nitty gritties a lot of times. But I think that's really key into what you just kind of mentioned there. So I just want to call that out really quick for everyone here.
Thank you. Yeah, it totally makes sense what you're saying. And like I said, back to the point where, we need to keep being aware of what we are using and how we are using the technology, which also talks to Piyush's methodology of saying that we need a phased approach always, where we are continuously reviewing what we are doing based on what the requirement is. And this has, just this last year, we have seen an overall traffic and page view improvement of about 5%. But what was significant was a 10% increase in the user interaction, right, with the site's main menu, which for us was really very important, because we want to be able to drive people to where we want them to go while not being very, apparent about it. And we also found that we had an 8% increase in our average domain lookup time, which for us was equally critical. So, being
those are good success metrics to measure it.
Totally. Yeah. And the component-based setup that we have on our website, the amount of flexibility that it has offered to our folks across our organization has ensured that it doesn't become too difficult for them to, add the relevant content. And it also gives the different communication teams, like the communication team in India will look to market only a certain type of the content, whereas somebody else in Germany may need something else, right? And to be able to give that kind of flexibility to the teams to say, you know what, this is your site, do what you want with it. And that has really worked out well for us.
That's awesome.
Great.
Well, I know we're running low on time here, and I mean, I'm kind of sad because I want to hear so much more about what you're talking about here, right? But I do want to put this out there to everyone listening, as I know, obviously these things are not built overnight. I think there's a lot of iteration, a lot of testing, and this is something that QED42 and Acquia we work very closely upon, right? And certainly having these conversations to not only strategize, but also put in plan in place for you to be successful, right? We would love to kind of engage with everyone here in kind of doing so. So with that, I'm going to be quiet now, and I'll turn it back to Piyush. Devanshu, Jaya, thank you so much for sharing your stories. We'll hopefully catch up offline here. But Piyush, I'll turn it back to you and QED and see what you guys want to do with this.
Sure. Thank you, Jaya. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
With this, I would like to thank everyone for joining us in. If you want to talk more about or interested in knowing more about how to implement Open DXPs, or have any questions about how your businesses should adopt or take a phase-wise approach, feel free to get in touch with me and Jeff, over email. Maybe we can put our Jeff. Maybe we can. I mean, our email addresses should be there in the invite already. So feel free to get in touch with us, guys. And thank you so much for everyone for listening to us and joining us.
Yeah, and if you guys want to hear more from Jaya, right, let us know, and we can certainly bring it back.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I just voluntold you, Jaya.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time here, and have a wonderful evening, and we'll catch you on the next webinar.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.